Hello everyone and welcome. Dans cette analyse visuelle, we are diving into something absolutely fascinating today. We're unpacking an incredible curriculum presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa, and they're doing something super cool. They're brilliantly bridging artistic genius with hard biomechanical science. You know, we usually look at art just, well, for its beauty, right? But today, we're going to flip that on its head and use it as a lens to literally see the invisible engineering of the human body.
So here's our exhibition guide for today's explainer. We're going to kick things off with the art of human balance, and then we'll walk through the specific works of Renoir, Degas, Manet, and Boudin. Finally, we'll wrap up by looking at exactly how this artistic intuition actually becomes modern medical science. Let's get into it. Starting us off, Section 1, the art of human balance, specifically looking at Phase 2, which is all about the mastery of movement. Okay, let's dive into this. The big overarching theme we're looking at today is oscillation and vertigo. Essentially, how does the human body manage gravitational forces and suspend itself between two totally distinct states? Because, and this is absolutely crucial to understand, balance isn't just a physical state of sitting or standing still. It's an incredibly complex neurological calculation. It's your cerebellum constantly tirelessly working behind the scenes to keep us upright in a world that is, quite literally, always trying to pull us down. Which brings us perfectly to our first artist in Section 2, Renoir, and his exploration of the pendular movement. Just take a look at how Renoir captures the sheer, unadulterated joy of motion in his famous painting, The Swing. Look really closely at the figure in motion here. Renoir isn't just painting a simple back-and-forth action. No, he's actually illustrating a constant, active dialogue between gravity and anticipation. Think about it. When you're on a swing, your brain is calculating your trajectory in real time. It's constantly adjusting muscle tone, anticipating the return arc. The massive takeaway here? Balance is actually a prediction, not just a reaction. How cool is that?
And this perfectly illustrates the idea of the invisible made visible. What we're seeing as a joyful afternoon swing is actually the vestibular system putting in serious work. This is the sensory system tucked away in your inner ear, and it's orchestrating thousands of tiny micro-corrections. In fact, you know that familiar, stomach-dropping, wonderful feeling, the sheer pleasure of swinging? That's essentially a neurological reward system. Your brain is literally rewarding you for managing your balance so perfectly.
So how do we actually measure something like this today? Well, let's bring in the Kinexa angle. Kinexa uses advanced AI to evaluate exactly what Renoir painted purely by intuition: stability in a moving, oscillating environment. Their AI measures what the human eye simply can't catch. It quantifies the center of gravity to assess dynamic balance, unipodal stances, and even cervical mobility. They are literally taking the art of the swing and turning it into quantifiable, actionable therapeutic data. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and move to Section 3 to see how this builds. Here we have Degas and invisible biomechanics. Just look at the incredible grace of the dancer here. Degas was an absolute master at capturing the single-leg stance, which is arguably the absolute purest expression of mastered balance. I mean, it looks entirely effortless, right? But what we're actually witnessing is pure invisible biomechanics. The entire body is rapidly reorganizing itself. The ankle is absorbing shock, the knee is stabilizing, the hip is aligning perfectly, and the gaze is locked onto a single anchor point. Degas captured that exact suspended moment where the body is perfectly balanced on a knife edge between absolute mastery and a complete fall. Now, prepare yourselves for an absolutely mind-blowing fact. 200. To maintain that beautiful, vertical, single-leg stance we just looked at, the proprioceptors in the sole of your foot are firing off 200 signals per second to your brain. 200 distinct messages, every single second, literally just to keep you from falling over. It's an absolute marvel of the human nervous system.
And that brings us right back to our Kinexa angle. Degas painted the beautiful moment, sure, but Kinexa actually measures the hard mechanics of it. By assessing unipodal stability and the exact quality of that plantar anchoring, remember those 200 signals per second? Kinexa can use this single-leg stance as a highly accurate indicator of a patient's overall neuromotor health. They take an artistic moment of pure grace and transform it into measurable medical data.
Now, I want you to hold that specific image in your mind. Keep Degas' precise, isolated static suspension right there, because we're about to contrast it with something entirely different. We are moving from static suspension to the dynamic, sliding, continuous fluidity of weight transfer.
Welcome to Section 4, Manette and Controlled Imbalance.
Let's look at Manet's incredible exploration of ice skating. Notice how this perfectly captures the absolute paradox of the glide. These bodies, they seem to be perpetually leaning, like they are constantly on the very verge of wiping out, and yet they are propelled forward, gliding smoothly with absolute elegance. It's this continuous flow of movement that relies entirely on a state of beautifully controlled imbalance.
If we actually break down the physical mechanics of this fluid glide, we find it's all about lateral weight transfer. Every single push on the ice activates crossed muscle chains right across the body, and at the very center of it all, the pelvis steps up as the master conductor. It seamlessly directs each impulse and transition of weight to keep the skater moving forward instead of, crashing down onto the ice. And our third Kinexa angle shows us exactly how modern therapy tackles this dynamic movement. Kinexa's AI precisely quantifies the symmetry of this lateral weight transfer and the fluidity of these exact support transitions. Think about that for a second. What Manet observed and painted with sheer intuitive brilliance centuries ago, modern AI can now map, measure, and analyze with mathematical perfection.
All right, let's step off the ice and head into our final artistic laboratory in Section 5. Boudin, facing the horizon. Here, things get a bit more chaotic as we introduce extreme environmental factors.
In Boudin's On the Beach, we're looking at a totally new challenge. Here's the ultimate confrontation between human verticality and the immense, flat, horizontal line of the sea. The subjects here aren't standing on solid ground. They're on unstable, shifting sand, and they're often fighting against the wind. This kind of environment is a permanent, chaotic challenge to the human balance system.
Actually, walking on this kind of shifting sand acts as a constant proprioceptive micro-rehabilitation for your feet and ankles. But to stay upright in this vast open space, your brain has to rely super heavily on the vestibulo-ocular system. By fixing the gaze on the horizon line, your eyes provide the brain with a stable reference point. The horizon literally serves as the natural calibrator for human verticality. It's like nature's spirit level.
Concluding our specific case studies, the Kinexa angle here focuses on measuring a patient's postural adaptation on variable terrain. It's testing the absolute resilience of the balance system against exactly the kind of environmental perturbations, like shifting ground and visual vastness, that Boudin so loved to paint. Which brings us to our final synthesis in Section 6. Intuition becomes medical science. Bringing all of these different observations together, the overarching lesson of today's explainer becomes brilliantly, undeniably clear. The great artists of the past intuitively understood the deep, complex mechanics of the human body long before we ever had the technology to actually track it. Art has always been able to capture what medical science, with the help of Kinexa and Dr. Christophe Delong, is now finally able to measure and quantify. Let's do a rapid recap of what we've learned from our 4 visual laboratories today. Number 1, from Renoir, we learned that balance is an active prediction. 2, from Degas, we saw the incredible, invisible biomechanics of unipodal grace. 3, Manet taught us about the elegant fluidity of controlled imbalance. And finally, 4, Boudin showed us exactly how our bodies adapt to chaotic environments by using the horizon as a natural calibrator. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. When this explainer ends and you stand up from your chair today, I want you to just take a brief moment and actually feel your feet on the floor. Think about it. How many hundreds of invisible signals is your own brain calculating right at this very second just to keep you from falling over? The sheer invisible brilliance of your own everyday biomechanics is nothing short of a masterpiece. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible visual journey.